Hello friends, my name is Steve Guttenberg and I am the audiophiliac and I am excited. Yes, I am, because today it is my great pleasure to tell you all about the all new, or mostly new, Klipsch RP-600M 2. Yes, finally an update to the massively popular 600M. Now, the original was my speaker of the year in 2018 when I was still writing for CNET. And it has served as a budget reference for me ever since. I just love that speaker. So when I heard about the Mark II version, well, it made me a little nervous. Were they going to screw it up? Because it's so right, just as it is. What could they do to it to make it better and not just different? That's the way, this was similar a couple of weeks ago when I reviewed the Magnapan LRS Plus, similar, updating a much beloved speaker to the new version. But anyway, this time out, well, there's a story to tell. Like the original, it's a two-way stand mount speaker with a horn-loaded tweeter. It's a titanium tweeter, 6.5-inch ceram-metallic woofer. I'm going to put up a picture of the original 600M and the 600M 2 side by side, and yeah, they're pretty much the same thing, except look a little closer and you'll see the horn on the Mark II version is 6.75 inches square and the original is 5.75 inches square. So it's an inch bigger in both dimensions. Actually looks bigger than that, but I took out my tape measure and that's what it is. Now the tweeter itself, the titanium tweeter, is similar, but it's been revised in a number of ways. I think the phase plug is different, but nothing dramatic. And I'm going to show you a picture of the cutaway of the tweeter and an exploded view of the horn. As for the woofer, the 6.5-inch woofer, again, it's similar, but with a bigger voice coil, and it has Faraday rings. And they're claiming that it's a lower distortion woofer. Okay, look around back. Put the two side by side again, and you'll see they look actually pretty different. The fit and finish, I don't know how well this shows up in the picture, of the Mark II version is a significant upgrade over the original. They both have Tractrix horns in the rear ports are Tractrix, but it's the binding posts. The new one has anodized aluminum binding posts that are connected. The by-wire ones are connected with jumpers. The original had plastic binding posts and metal straps, which is not the preferred, let's say, most audiophile way of doing it. So the new version is definitely an upgrade there. Now, it's interesting, if you look at the specifications, and I will put them up side by side here, again, no gigantic differences, although the new one weighs 2 pounds more than the original. The sensitivity of the new one is actually a little lower, which surprised me because it's kind of a thing about Klipsch making high sensitivity speakers. But I think it's 94.5 dB. It's still pretty darn high sensitivity. It's an easy load. I use the speaker with my 2.3 watt Decware amplifier to very nice effect. Yes, it plays reasonably loud, but when you use 2 watts on a speaker, even a high sensitivity speaker, it's not going to be the most dynamic, you feel it in your chest kind of sound. It's not going to do that. But in terms of playing loud enough, yeah, 2 watts actually played loud enough. But I'm going to get to that later on in this review. Oh, yes, and by the way, there will be an audiophiliac viewer system of the day later on in today's show. There is a warranty, yes there is, and the warranty is for 5 years. Now, the original 600 price was $568 a pair. The new price for the Mark II version is $749 a pair. The finishes are both vinyl wrap. It is black ash, I guess, some version of black, and walnut. And I have the walnut version here, and I have to say, for vinyl, it looks pretty darn nice. If you can't swing $749 for the 602s, well, you can consider the 500 Mark II, which is $599 a pair. For my electronic options, here's what I chose. I used the Mytek Liberty 2, which is a DAC/preamp, and I used it with the Schiit Agir power amp and also the Mytek Brooklyn amp. And alternatively, I just used the Liberty as a DAC and then used the Decware Zen Triode as an integrated amplifier. Those are my 3 amps. So 2 watts a channel, 20 watts a channel, and 250 watts a channel. How's that for options? My music selections commenced with the Persuasion's Sing U2. This was a Chesky recording. I was present at the session. It was done in a church, not a recording studio. Church for better acoustics, let's put it that way. It's just straight ahead, no equalization, no auto-tune, no nothing, just what these singers brought to the session. And it was fantastic. I was there. It was spine-tingling to hear their voices just filling this church. Playing the recording, yeah. So what was the difference in sound between the original 600 and the 600 II? And anyway, I'm starting with this just because it's vocal, so it's pure mid-range. And the difference was presence and clarity and transparency. That's what I was hearing. Now the original still sounded really good, but just kind of softer, less of a sense of that they're right there kind of thing. Not that I would ever think of the original 600 as soft, but the new version isn't brighter per se, but it is clear, and especially so in the mid-range where those vocals live. So after listening to these a cappella versions of U2 songs, I decided to listen to the actual band with Achtung Baby. That's fun to say. The differences between the a cappella U2 and the real U2, well, dynamic range compression on the band's recording was intense, and the processing and equalization and just screwing around with the sound was completely over the top for, let's just say, artistic effect. And it worked extremely well. That liveness really shines through on the 2. And the edge, his guitar's distortion, his intentional distortion was just a little more scratchy and raw sounding over the 2 than the original 600. And of course, Bono's vocals, his soaring vocals, the way he just lets it out, man. There was more spine-tingling power to it over the 2 than the 1. The next selection was Eric Clapton, Unplugged. And it's a terrific recording. It's practically an audiophile recording. Kind of reminds me in a way of the Paul McCartney Unplugged, which is, I don't think, that far apart in time. But anyway, the Eric Clapton Unplugged is a stunning recording. Eric is in top form. His band is great. And mind you, this is not done in a concert venue. This is in a television studio. So the audience is small. So it's very high intimacy for them and for us, the listeners of this recording. And I used the Decware Zen Triode, the little 2-watt amplifier. And it was simply stunning. It was one of those things. I'm listening to speakers that are $749 a pair. It just sounded like a much more high-end system because of the refinement and beauty of sound that I was hearing. It was really soul-stirring. And the thing is that Eric Clapton, being that close, physically close to the audience, I really felt he was singing to them, like more than a typical concert venue. The connection between audience and performer was really fantastic. And the Decware 602 combination was nailing it. Oh, but then I decided I should go back to the Shit Agir, which is 20 watts channel, by the way, in case you're keeping score, 10 times the power, more or less. And it did have more energy to it a little bit, and especially in the low end, but it was more veiled. There was less of that connection between Eric and the audience with the Shit Agir. For the next series of listening tests, I popped out the Agir and I hooked up the MyTech Brooklyn amp, which is 250 watts channel, way more powerful amp, and I played Bob Marley's live performance from 1978 in Boston. And I played it loud. I wouldn't play, say, concert loud, but pretty darn loud for me because I'm not into the loud thing. But anyway, I played it loud over the 602 and said, yeah, I dig this. But I decided to do a comparison with the ELAC Uni-Fi Reference speakers at this point. Now, they're much more expensive speakers. They're $1,200 a pair versus $749. It's a three-way speaker with a coaxial mid-range tweeter and a 6.5-inch woofer. And the cabinet is a bit smaller. Well, I would say that the ELAC had a more precise sound, especially in the focus of the imaging and that sort of thing. But the Marley sound, the sound of Bob Marley just driving the crowd crazy and just feeling this intensity of energy, that came through with more, let's say, a vivid sound, more jump to it, more excitement over the 600 than it did over the Uni-Fi Reference. It's funny, I felt the need to play the Uni-Fi Reference louder than I was playing the 600 just to get more of that energy. Yeah, but I did feel literally that the bass coming out of the Uni-Fi Reference just had more, not just more power to it, but more detail like that. I can't remember Marley's bass player, but I felt more of that live electric bass sound coming out of the Uni-Fi Reference than I did over the 600 too. There were things about the Uni-Fi Reference that I preferred. That bottom end drive was stronger, definition was better, but I had to play it louder, and every time I went back to the 600 Mark II, the energy levels just shot up. Shot up, maybe that's an exaggeration, but they were stronger over the 600 than they were over the ELAC. And especially for high energy music, I preferred the 600 too. Okay, so now it's time for, so Steve, what do you really think? I think the Klipsch RP-600M II is a worthy successor to the original. And that is saying a lot, because the 600, I mean, I can't keep count of how many times I use it in reviews and how many times I just listen to it for pleasure, because I just got off on the idea that here is this very affordable speaker that is just so much fun to listen to, and it just pulls me in. And I've heard from so many fans over the years that love the 600. Matter of fact, just recently, a couple days ago, somebody was telling me about how much they like their 600. And Noah, that I just reviewed, he has a pair of 600Ms in his kitchen, I think, in the other room than his main studio there. They're kind of everywhere, and they deserve to be. So does the 600M Mark II survive? Is it worth it? Is it worth the upgrade? Well, if you already have the original and you're digging it, you know what? I would say stick with that. I don't think you need to do the upgrade. Well, let me put it this way. If you're searching for more clarity from your sound, yes, you should get the Mark II. But if you're basically happy with the 600 and you have an upgrade urge, get better electronics. Get a better DAC or turntable or cartridge or something, and you will get more out of the original 600. I still stand by the original is killer for the money. If you have yet to join the 600 Club, this is a great time to get in, because the new one is a very, very exciting speaker. So that's it. That's what I got for you. And now, speaking of phenomenal, it is now time for the Audiophiliac Viewer System of the Day. I like this. I like this. This is Haydn's system. He's 22 years old and he lives in Wales. Now the system description is a bit tricky. I'm going to get through this the best I can. He's using an Xbox One X as a digital source, and that feeds an Amazon Basics 192K DAC, which in turn runs into a Tillsbury Audio Mini Passive Preamp 2. And speaking of two, he has two Behringer A500 reference stereo amplifiers. One of them powers those big speakers. Those were DIY built by his father, Celestion DT44s. And the other amp is running the smaller Wharfedale Diamond 9.0s. They're sitting on top of the big speakers. And there's also a Wharfedale Diamond SW150 powered subwoofer in that system. Also noteworthy, there's a Denon DMD M30 mini disc recorder that he occasionally uses when he's going for a more, in quotes, analog sound than the Xbox, and a pair of Turtle Beach PX4 wireless headphones for use when The neighbors complain. Got it. Anyway, thanks so much, Heidi. Okay, we are back. My name is Steve Guttenberg, and yes, I am the audiophiliac, in case you were wondering. But anyway, I'm so glad you're here watching the channel. And to think that I make these videos and they go out into the world and thousands of people watch me talking to my phone is still a huge kick. I've been doing this almost 5 years. It still turns me on to think that there's so many of you out there. That is so cool. But I will say, if you dig what I'm doing, would you consider joining my Patreon? It's the best way to help support the channel in a very real way. The other thing you might want to check out is my podcast, which I keep saying it's only a few months old. It's getting more than a few months old. It's 4 or 5 months old. But anyway, it's getting better and better. If you have yet to check it out, please do. I have a website just for the podcast. That's it, just podcasts. Or you can listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or iHeartRadio, etc., etc., etc. And by the way, if you have gotten this far into the video, I guess you like me. So please hit the like button and consider subscribing if you have yet to do so. We just hit 215,000 subscribers here on the channel. Incredible. So thank you to each and every one of you for being here. And that's it. My work here is at last complete. Bye-bye. See you soon.